Hey soccer fans, welcome back to the Feed the Fire podcast. I am your host Nick, and once again we are talking all things Major League Soccer and the Chicago Fire. Before we get into the heart of the content here, I want to just take a minute and apologize if my energy levels are a little low today. I've been fighting something for like the last week or two. Don't know if it's a cold or something else or just the winter blues. I miss the sun and the warmth. Maybe all of the above. But we are going to be talking expansion draft today. We're going to be talking free agency today and who the Fire may be targeting in free agency. But I want to start the show with a nice little holiday surprise that I received today. My Chicago Fire season ticket rep texted me yesterday asking my availability for a call because, quote, someone special wanted to wish me happy holidays, end quote. I had a hunch who it was, and these kind of calls aren't completely unfamiliar with fan bases, but it was really nice to hear from none other than head coach and director of sport Gregg Berhalter. It was a very brief call, not even 3 minutes, and absolutely it was a marketing move, it's a PR move, it's a season ticket member perk, but it was really nice. And while Gregg did have some talking points, like you could tell he was actually listening to what you were saying and then asking follow-up questions, so he was engaged, which was great to see. But mostly it was great to see that a guy who is so focused on his work, on managing this team, on building out the sporting side of things, who has so much to get done, especially on like the first day of free agency, he's taking at least an hour out of his day or several hours over the next week to reach out to season ticket members and show that they are an important part of the Chicago Fire fan base, an important part of the organization. So I appreciate it from that perspective. And I did record the call so you could listen in and hear some of the little banter and a little of the fluff that we talked about. Hopefully I don't sound like too much of a fanboy. And hopefully everyone's cool with me publishing this because, it's marketing material. It's a little something for the fans here. But with that, I will give you now the next 2.5 minutes, my very nice, brief PR phone conversation here with Gregg Berhalter. Good afternoon. This is Nick.
Nick, how you doing? This is Gregg Berhalter from the Chicago Fire.
Hey, Gregg, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing real well now that I get to talk to you. This is a nice early Christmas gift.
That's great. I'd like to thank you for getting on board next season. We're excited to have you. We have exciting things going on with the team, and it's great to have fans like you behind us.
I really do appreciate hearing that. I've been supporting the team in one fashion or other since '98. Grew up playing soccer, so it's great to be a season ticket holder again and keep coming out to the stadium.
That's great. What are you looking forward to the most for next season?
Oh, next season, part of it is just kind of reconnecting with a lot of the other supporters and fans and season ticket holders that I got to meet this year. Also looking forward to taking the family to games. My son is really enjoying getting into soccer, and he's very excited to come out and see the Fire play again.
How old is your son?
My one son's 8, my other one is 6, and I have a daughter who's 10. So,
great.
Yeah, we make a few family weekends out of it.
Yeah, definitely. That's great. So tell me about some of your more memorable experiences at Soldier Field.
So, just this past season, I think it was just kind of taking it all in. It had been a long time since I'd been regularly attending Fire games, but I remember back as a kid when the Fire were playing at North Central College, like between...
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I just remember watching DeMarcus Beasley and how fast he was, just sprinting up and down the wing, and I just had my jaw on the ground watching him play. It was amazing.
That's so fun. It's always great when you identify with a certain player or respect their attributes, that's when you really start connecting with the team, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's kind of funny, like thinking back on that and how everyone's looking forward to the next winger that the team may or may not be bringing in this season.
Yeah, exactly. No, we're going to do our best to build a team that everybody's proud of, get guys that can play attractive soccer, entertain the fans. That's what we're striving for.
Oh, that's perfect. I think that has been that's always a lofty goal, and you always hear so many people do it or say it. But I think you guys are poised to actually do it.
I hope so. That's the idea. Nick, it's been great speaking to you. Happy holidays, and again, glad to have you on board for next season. And let's do this.
I'm really looking forward to it, Gregg, with your leadership and with the players buying in again. I'm excited. Merry Christmas for you and the family as well.
Thank you. Talk soon, Nick. See you.
Looking forward to it. Bye. Well, there you have it, fans. That was my conversation with Gregg Berhalter. I'm really hoping I get a chance to shake his hand and actually talk to him face to face, maybe pick his brain a little bit more about coaching and transitioning from playing to coaching, from national to club, to what players he's looking forward to signing and talking to and who he's going to bring in. And I tried maybe to hint at it a little bit by asking him, that we're looking forward to a new winger. But he gave the company line. We're excited about building a team that the club and community can be proud of, right? So he's giving the lines. Still a little PR move here, but again, really nice of him to take the time out. Thank you to Maddie, my season ticket rep, for setting that up. And looking forward to everything else that Gregg's going to do this offseason. And we're going to be talking about it here on the Feed the Fire podcast. But speaking of signing players and speaking of player acquisition, we are going to take a look at the MLS expansion draft. As you know by now, San Diego FC is the latest franchise in Major League Soccer. And on Wednesday, December 11th, they had their expansion draft where they were able to pick 5 unprotected players from across Major League Soccer. However, they only get to pick 1 player from each team. And as you know, teams got to protect certain players, leave certain players available. But what I will say is that it was an unusual draft from the San Diego perspective, from the players they selected specifically. The quote-unquote best players available were probably Xande Silva from Atlanta, Ben Bender, defender out of Charlotte. We all know that you got to have a good center back, got to have some good defenders if you're going to play well in MLS. Yuri Tavares of Charlotte, Gaston Brugman, MLS Cup MVP, not a protected player from the Galaxy, though I do forget if he's a free agent. That was one of the rules that teams, when protecting their players, even if they are a free agent, they're still considered on part of your team for expansion draft purposes, and you could protect them. That way you can continue to negotiate with them. Also, Paul Arriola from Dallas is available. MLS vet, still's got some good speed and some moves on the wing. He's a California guy. A lot of people thought maybe they'd bring him home and have him be kind of the local flavor to the team. And also Julian Gressel of Inter Miami most recently available. But none of those guys were chosen by San Diego FC. Instead, they took a little different route. And some people are saying this kind of reminded them of how FC Cincinnati maybe tried to get a little too cute and tried to really kind of pick different pieces of the roster that each roster building mechanism is going to be used for. What do I mean by that? They use the expansion draft to get some depth and get some money. They use the college draft similarly. They use free agent to identify a certain roster need. They use DPs to identify certain roster needs. So some people are like, this kind of sounds like Cincinnati and how they're trying to take different mechanisms and address different parts of your roster. And we saw what happened in Cincinnati those first 3 or 4 seasons. So hopefully the guys at San Diego FC were not getting too cute when they chose Heine Brisseth, midfielder from Orlando City. 0 appearances in his first season in MLS, and his roster hit 175,000. They also chose Hamidou Diop, a defender from Charlotte, who had 0 appearances for Charlotte in his second MLS season. His salary is just over $89,000. They also chose Jasper Loffelson, a defender midfielder from Colorado and RSL. His roster hit 230,000, but again, 0 appearances this past season. So they have picked, with their first 3 picks, guys who didn't play at all last season. Now, their final 2 picks, they immediately flipped them, traded them for some cash here. Their 4th pick was Jose Kajima, a midfielder from St. Louis. He actually saw the field last season. He made 18 appearances, 8 starts, and 782 minutes. This was his first season in MLS. His roster hit is only $71,401. But they immediately flipped him to DC United and made $400,000 in general allocation money in GAM for that. Then probably the biggest name on their selection list, Thiago Andrade, forward from New York City FC, who also 0 appearances last season, despite being kind of a regular role player, I'll call it, in 2001 and 2022 for NYCFC. His cap hit was about $200,000 last season, and San Diego immediately flipped him to Toronto, and in return got the number 9 overall pick in the 2025 Super Draft, $250,000 in conditional GAM, and a sell-on percentage in any future transfers abroad. So they get in this expansion draft about $650,000 in general allocation money, and you can turn that into probably a decent starter, mid-level starter here in MLS. So that's where they are able to take those two guys and get that. Also, it's been rumored that they are close to signing an impact player, whether it be a DP, whether it be a U22 initiative player, and that's just more general allocation money that they can put towards signing players like that. But it really seemed like their strategy for the expansion draft was to accumulate money, general allocation money, and to accumulate kind of the back end of the roster. Fill it out here. Guys who've got a year or two in MLS who can come off the bench or who can at least bring a bit of professionalism into the training session, so it's not like they're starting from scratch. Again, looking at their roster build prior to this, they did sign Mexican international Chucky Lozano as their first player, as their designated player, and it looks like they will be diving like headfirst into free agency. I expect to hear some announcements from them over the next couple weeks. They have been rumored, again, these are rumors here, but this is part of the fun of having a podcast. It's rumored that they are linked with Kevin De Bruyne of Manchester City as well. So how crazy would that be to hear De Bruyne to Lozano for the San Diego goal? Like, that would be a wild thing to hear over the airwaves on MLS broadcast, but that is where San Diego is. But speaking of free agency, there were a number of players who were either left unprotected in the expansion draft or a number of players that are just out of contract and are free agents. And as you recall, with MLS free agency rules, there are new and quote-unquote better rules for the players after the last collective bargaining agreement. To be eligible for free agency in Major League Soccer now, the player has to be at least 24 years old in the year in which the immediately preceding league season concluded, and they have to have at least 5 years of MLS service. I think if they don't have the 5 years, they can go into the re-entry draft. I believe that's their way back in, or there's other restrictions on how they can negotiate a different kind of free agent, little FA, little free agent deal versus a MLS capital FA free agent deal. So that's things to keep in mind as we look at kind of the big board here. Matt Doyle over at MLS put together a list of his top players. I mean, the list is too long for me to go through, but he put together a list of top players here that we'll quickly run through, and we'll see if any of these names jump out for the Chicago Fire. And he starts his big board here with the striker position, with the center forward, and his top 3 available free agents: Jeremy Ebobisse, Kai Kamara, and Joseph Martinez. Now let's first take Kai Kamara off the list. Been there, done that, don't want to see that again. But it is intriguing to think that Jeremy Ebobisse is available, may not be going back to San Jose. When he left Portland to go to San Jose, he was like fringe USMNT striker. He was supposed to help rejuvenate their offense, be the focal point of the attack, and for whatever reason, it didn't work out. Whether it was his play dipped, he maybe was overhyped, not performing up to expectations, whether it was the roster build around him, the coaching, whether it was the ownership who just didn't want to put the funds and investment into the top team there, maybe was focused on other things. Whatever it is, Ebobisse did not pan out the way he was projected to when he came out of Portland. Also, when he came out of Portland, he was playing a little bit more on the wing for Portland. San Jose had him playing more as that central striker, but still could not become, a Golden Boot contender type of striker. He would be very interesting for the Chicago Fire, though. The way I'm looking at the Fire's roster build is you want to have 4 strikers. You want to have your main guy, your starter, number 1 striker, the guy who's going to get you 15 to 20 goals. That's Hugo Kuipers. You're going to want to have that second striker that he can partner with, to be determined. you need to have a development striker, a young guy who you can bring up to kind of take the place of one of those two strikers when they either get transferred or move on, whatever the case is. That was Yorgos Koutsias in my mind. Again, we've talked about the rumors that he could be on the way out to Lugano, but they did sign David Pareba as well. So those are your young development guys. And then you need a guy off the bench if you're chasing a game, change of pace, change of game flow. And right now they've got Tom Barlow. I think they should try to move on from Barlow, but given his contract, I don't know if that's a possibility. So I think Ebo Bise could fit with the Chicago Fire in that second striker role, playing maybe just a little bit deeper than Kuipers, though he does like to get in the box and he does like to get in a lot of the same spaces as Kuipers does, so maybe they're not the right pairing, but that could be something that Gregg Berhalter would have to consider. I also like the idea of Josef Martinez coming to the Chicago Fire and just running blindly towards goal with Hugo Kuipers right next to him, but I just don't think that his personality is going to fit into what Gregg Berhalter wants to do, and I don't know if his personality is going to fit in with the rest of the team. As you know, he can be very energetic, be a leader in the locker room, and is that the kind of guy that we want to build this new culture around? Not that there's a negative around Josef Martinez in that sense. Some people might think there are, but I just don't know if Gregg's coming in to change the culture, if someone with as big a personality as Josef Martinez is going to be able to fit into that. So, couple intriguing options on the center forward board. A lot of Chicago Fire fans want a winger. They want us to go overseas, find a designated player winger, and it's hard to disagree with them. We saw what strong wing play can do for the LA Galaxy, and Gabriel Peck and Joseph Paintsel got them all the way to an MLS Cup championship. So can the Chicago Fire find wingers in free agency? The top three that are on Matt Doyle's list are Fafa Picault, Johnny Russell, and Jonathan Lewis from Colorado, is he? I think he was with Colorado. Yes, with Colorado. So Fafa Picault is in negotiations to return to Vancouver, reportedly, but I don't like any of these options. I don't like Picault. I don't like Russell. I think that they're just too far into their career to be a game in, game out impact player, someone who is a threat for an assist or a goal, or to just burn the defense a couple times every match for a full 34-game season. Jonathan Lewis is an interesting proposition here. I mean, he is, 27 years old? Sorry, I can't do math in my head. 27 years old, but I wonder if he'd rather stay with Colorado, and they're already in negotiations. So I don't know if Chicago's going to break the bank to pull one of these MLS vets away from their current clubs. But wingers is definitely a position of need for the Fire, though a lot of people think we're set with the current roster, especially with Haile Selassie and with Chris Mueller. Whatever your opinions are on Chris Mueller, at the very worst, he's a serviceable MLS wing player. But looking still in the attack, maybe there's some guys that could move, to different positions in the midfield. Matt Doyle lists Albert Rusnak, Latif Blessing, Alex Ring, Anibal Godoy, Jackson Ewell, Alejandro Bedoya, and Brandon Servania as other kind of attacking or central midfield options here. Blessing would be interesting, but again, I think that his role is limited in MLS. At least that's how we've seen him play in other clubs. And we need starters. We need a starting attacking midfielder, a starting winger. So Rusnak would be interesting. Alex Ring, I think, is a little more defensive, along with some of these other guys. Someone said that Jackson Ewell would be a great fit for Chicago, a guy who can orchestrate things. And I just don't see it. I just don't see Jackson Ewell. Maybe it's a little bit of that USMNT bias that I didn't like him running the offense for the US or transitioning from defense to offense, being a pivot. But hey, maybe with the Gregg Berhalter connection there, he might come to Chicago. However, we saw Berhalter move on from him as he got to develop other players. So I don't know if Berhalter would want to go back to Ewell, but there are. I did see, I don't know if it was a Matt Doyle or if it was another kind of MLS pundit that said he would be a good fit in Chicago. But we've got Gutierrez for this, and I think we've already got Kellen Acosta, and personally I'd love to see Mauricio Pineda move in to that D-mid position with Acosta, that he can use his passing skills to help break some of these lines and launch the attack. So I don't think any of these guys are fits for the Chicago Fire. Looking at the D-mid position, João Paulo, Ilie Sanchez, Victor Wanyama, all excellent players, all guys who are MLS vets. I don't know if João Paulo is going to be the kind of guy that the Fire want. Again, age and injuries are slowing him down, but he's still an extremely trustworthy player, as Matt Doyle writes, and a guy who knows the league and a guy who can have an impact on games. However, I feel like he's more of the Gaston Jimenez mold, where he'll have one great game in 6, and you're just wondering what he's doing those other 5 games. Ilie Sanchez, Victor Wanyama, again, all kind of household MLS names, but I think there's a reason those guys are in free agency and not being snatched up or not being transferred or not being offered contract extensions as far as I know at this point. Those guys I don't think are the starters that the Chicago Fire are looking to acquire. Looking at the fullbacks and the center backs, we could use some help here, that's for sure. Ruan, Yamil Assad, Nick Lima, Raheem Edwards, guys again who are solid MLS players, but I don't know if they will fit in with the Fire. And again, I don't like going to other MLS clubs for impact players, though I think it's a little easier pill for me to swallow with defenders here. And as Matt Doyle writes, Yamil Assad had a breakout year. Ruan can still play an offensive role, but I think they need something more than what's available right now in MLS free agency. Center backs. This was a conversation I started having on Twitter because Jack Elliott of the Philadelphia Union is available, and this could be a really good fit for the Chicago Fire. And think of all these guys on this list, I think this is the one that has the most chance of actually happening for Chicago. He is, as Matt Doyle writes, on the right side of 30. I think he's 27 or 28. We saw what he did in that MLS Cup final a couple years back, but where I look at it as a positive is his value. Last season, his cap hit was only $800,000, and that is $500,000 less than Rafa Chihos' guaranteed salary was. So you're saving money. Maybe you have to sign him to a bigger deal if you're signing him in free agency and he's coming to your team to be your starter, but you could get probably a little bit less than $1.3 million for Jack Elliott over the course of a couple years, and he would probably be not different from Rafael Chihos. He's still a little bit of an offensive threat, and he's a little bit younger. So that would be a very good value proposition there, bringing in Jack Elliott. Not to mention the fact that he's a fantastic defender and has been on the part of some great defensive Union teams. I think this is a really good move for the Chicago Fire to go after Jack Elliott, and I would love to see it happen. Some of the other center backs on Matt Doyle's list: Jesus Murillo, Aaron Long. We talked about that and speculated about that and how that was a rumor but not a real rumor. And he's renegotiating with LAFC. Javier Arriaga, Lalas Abubakar, excuse me for mispronouncing that at first, Tim Parker, Wyatt Omsberg. And here, this is great that he makes Doyle's top 8 center backs. He's his number 7 available center back in free agency. And here's what he writes about the Fire's Wyatt Omsberg. I've always liked him, but it seems like he'd pick up an injury every time he gets close to breaking through. Reportedly still in negotiations with the Fire. So that's not wrong. That's exactly what happens, but I think the Fire coaching staff were so sold on Carlos Terán that they didn't realize how good a defender they had in Wyatt Omsberg. And I think he was too good to play with CF2 and to be in that development league there, but just couldn't break the Carlos Terán, Rafa Chihos center back pairing, and for whatever reason couldn't get ahead of Arnaud Souquet. I guess Klopas liked Souquet for his attacking role, even when he played him as a center back, a right center back in the 3 center back system. So did not find that to be very very convincing from Klopas or giving Wyatt Omsberg a chance. But it's great that he's renegotiating with the Fire, or continuing to negotiate with the Fire, and would love to see him back. I mean, he would be, if you had Jack Elliott, Carlos Terran, and Wyatt Omsberg backing him up, I think that's a pretty solid center back pairing, and you can start to focus your money and efforts in other parts of the roster. Also, you list Tanner Beason as another center back option. For goalkeepers, top available free agents, Steve Clark, Tim Melia, JT Marcinkowski, and Alex Bono. Now, we don't really need to get into this too much for the Chicago Fire because Fire have got goalkeepers for days, going all the way down to like the U15 level. But it is really interesting that Tim Melia is out of contract. Is this the start of Kansas City kind of trying to finally flip their roster and admit their window for trophies is closed? I don't know. Steve Clark's been around a few different teams, always performing at a high level. Does have those odd slip-up games where he kind of lets in a bit of a holler, but he's reportedly renegotiating with Houston. And Alex Bono, I still remember him back from his TFC days when they were winning trophies. But at this point, he seems to be, as Matt Doyle puts it, a veteran backup with big game experience. So those are the MLS free agents that are out there, and those are some of the guys that I'd like to see the Fire go after. Now, to conclude the show, just a couple other little tidbits from around the league that have come in. See if these news stories float your fancy at all. Miami, Inter Miami. We can't go a show without talking about Miami. Can't go a day if you're MLS without doing something pink and black and messy related here, right? Well, anyway, Inter Miami has revealed their new away kit, currently available for purchase now for the holidays, right? And they'll be releasing a new home kit as well. The rumors there are that the home kit is going to be like a shade of light pink and dark pink, and it's going to be striped. It's going to look an awful lot like a certain international jersey, the Argentine jersey there, for whatever reason. But yeah, those are the rumors that are coming out. This has some people kind of annoyed because, as far as I can think, no other team has gotten a new home and away kit in the same season. At least since Adidas has been doing it forever how long, right? It's always, you get the home kit one year, the away kit the next year, and then occasionally they'll add in a new third kit for some flavor. But Miami's getting 2 new kits this season, and they get to release their kit before Christmas, whereas most other kit reveals aren't until like early February, I want to say. If I remember the return to red with the Chicago Fire, that was like February 8th or something like that, because matches started a couple weeks later. So again, Miami's getting the Miami. They're getting the messy treatment here from MLS. They're getting both kits, one released early, the other one's already been leaked, so the design of the other one's already been leaked, so just something to keep in mind there. If you've got little Messi fans or Miami fans, go get yourself a jersey. Also, another little tidbit here: former Chicago Fire and former Dallas, DC United, Red Bulls, Nashville, and Atlanta player and MLS legend Dax McCarty is joining the MLS Season Pass broadcast team. He announced his retirement at the end of this season and will be getting behind the camera with a microphone and a suit and tie instead of lacing up his boots. So something to keep a lookout for as you gear up your watching and your pregame stuff. So congrats to Dax McCarty on the next step in his career. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap the show. Thank you to everyone for viewing and listening. Again, please make sure you are subscribing on YouTube because I'm coming out with 4 or 5 YouTube shorts every week. And please make sure you're liking, sharing, subscribing, rating, reviewing, all that stuff to help drive up visibility and traffic on the internets here to help us out here. So with that, thank you all again. Let's go Fire.